need to walk over there. And there is some playing around with some more entrances and windows. How do they react to the environment, right? So this was just one of the very many files that we created. So those are mostly buildings, but we have different files for assets and props and how they would fit inside this main architectural style that we wanted to see more involved, right? So just a very early version of the refinery, for example. But all of this in the end was given us the opportunity to just cherry pick the best ideas that we felt appropriate for this specific colonialism style, right? And where other people were able then to just grab the best parts and then use it in the actual game engine. Yeah, and this was pretty much the concept development for the colonialism modules. I hope you have a great time and wish you all the best for the next panels that are coming up.
Awesome, thanks Cristiano. So that pretty much covers the work we've been doing on the exteriors. So now let's jump to the interiors. So we pretty much had to follow that same ideation process that we did for the exterior, but now for the interior. Now, slightly more simple, we knew there was a few key areas that we needed to design. First, it was the social space. You know, this is basically these kind of communal hubs. We knew we wanted like that open kitchen, seating areas, windows, an area where people could kind of hang out and, you know, relax. And then second to that was habitation. You know, we knew these are gonna need to be abodes. We knew we needed bathrooms, hab units, but again, nothing in here would be, you know, pre-manufactured. So we wanted actual beds, not racks of beds. So everything about this process was about, you know, creating a design which you would look at and relate to and think, oh, I could see myself living there. I could see someone living there for quite a long period of time. So in habitation, you know, it's soft surfaces, soft shapes, but again, something which felt fairly integrated into the core architecture. In contrast to that, we knew we needed technical spaces. You know, these could be used in the future to be, I don't know, soil processing rooms or anything really within a technical bracket. So this one was quite a tricky one because, again, we needed to describe a feeling of age and, you know, a type of historical depth in this. So we tried a few you know, visual cues like, you know, there's the physical tape deck, you know, the clicky buttons, you know, again, to give you that feeling of like, all right, this isn't necessarily like a modern technology level, you know. And then the last major visual archetype was engineering. So these are the type of spaces, it could be a power room or an engine room, or some areas if your armor got beat up, you could, you know, repair your armor in there. Basically, it's a language which will enable us to create a variety of like engineering type spaces. And then once we'd established a spread of visual archetypes, we knew that they were all working well together. We could take that as a format and then start to think more about actual themes that we wanted in these outposts.
Yeah, kind of looking at who would be the people that would be inhabiting it, what are the circumstances that would drive them to be there. And so we sort of came up with like, I call it the triangle of kind of the edge points of the independent, the outlaw, and the corporate. And you know, where the inhabitants would fall somewhere in that spectrum of 3 points. And it's also important to note too, you know, that this stuff would be applicable for the stuff we've done in Stanton. Like if we wanted to add these backwards in Stanton as well, that it wasn't just exclusively Pyro based.
Basically, when we was doing the design process, we pretty much focused on independent. Mainly because that was our baseline. It was very easy to kind of design these and visually design these spaces to, is it like an independent farmer or is it an independent miner? And then with that, we wanted to really create an experience where you walked into one of these outposts and it feels old. It feels relatable, but it doesn't feel recognizable, kind of similar to if you went to like a historic ruin or a historic part that you'd never really been to before.
Or, yeah, somebody's old farm.
Exactly. So we did a lot of exploration process of like, what type of artifacts would you find there? You know, how did people used to decorate the house in this time period? You know, you'd still see patterns, surfaces, shapes in these independent outposts.
Yeah, even early versions of modern technology. So you could see that, you know, oh, this is like the mobiGlas I have, but it's an older mobiGlas, or just as an example.
But also when we were, even just to back up a little bit, when we're talking about the planets, we have a certain style, or we have certain amounts of points of interest that we want to go to, how we pull the player around the universe. And so Dave and I and Will and others sit down and talk and say, all right, what do we need here? And all right, well, we need mining facilities. And then that helps to inform Ian and the other design teams and our teams of, all right, is that an independent theme? Is it a corporate theme? Is it an outlaw theme? So these are all kind of layers, but the first and foremost, it's, oh, this is farming, or this is mining, or this is, you know, cargo.
Because looking at something like Pyro 2, which, you know, again, starting from that sort of original Précis sentence of the planet, was the idea, was like that was a heavily mined out planet that had been kind of stripped of a lot of resources. So there would be remaining infrastructure that would have been corporate back in the day, but is now independent or now even an outlaw setting. So, and then there would be the ones that would just be a straight independent one and stuff like that. But yeah, exactly like you said, you know, we'd start with that sort of the base and then apply the theming to it to kind of.
When we're thinking about the theming, we kind of wanted like a space catalog, like a furniture catalog. So I know this is quite big for Chris, is we kind of went down that process of, okay, let's design this one independent outpost in a few different ways. Like, how could people have decorated it in many different ways? And it's quite a fun process because you basically create space furniture catalogs, which again are going to be ways for the developers to be able to dress and world build, but you know, eventually maybe it's a way for people to decorate their own spaces, you know. When we're thinking about the outlaw versions of these outposts, again, the process is very similar. You think about the visual rule sets which would turn this into an outlaw outpost, namely, you know, has it been taken over by hostile intent? You know, is the signs of combat, is the signs of destruction still present? The actual physical act of occupying one of these outposts, have they defended it, have they boarded it up?
Yeah, it could be any number of situations. Yeah, it could be outlaws are squatting here and they're operating it as a base, which makes it a potential combat space. Or is it, you know, was it potentially an independent refinery that outlaws attacked and killed everybody there, and now
is it a drug facility, so on and so forth?
Exactly.
And then lastly, on with the corporate, you know, it's something that we really want to advance out into in the future, but that feeling that this location is owned by a corporate umbrella, you know, that would tie into the branding. You know, maybe it ties into the costumes that you'd expect the NPCs to be in there. You know, so there's a huge amount of visual world building that we can do to, you know, present these outposts in a few different ways.
And even potentially reputation as well. Like we talked before about that idea that you know, if you do missions for a corporate outpost, that it, you know, reflects in your general relationship with that corporation.
I mean, that ties into the clan tags. Like, maybe you've just come from one of the space stations that, you know, was occupied by a certain gang type, and then they sent you to a settlement on one of the surfaces of Pyro, and clearly it's been, you know, tagged by a different gang. So you basically want that read and that consistency throughout. Now, one of the outpost themes that I was quite excited about getting into was the idea of a trading outpost. You know, we've been talking about, you know, buying and selling for a while, but thinking about it in a frontier context, you know, it's almost like the money's kind of worthless, but it's more about the ability to barter or trade. So fundamentally, I thought it'd be cool that if we kind of design a module which focuses around one of these trading posts. So within a planet, it's where, people would kind of, trek to and, barter or trade components and then go back. We was talking about the idea of if I had a farm in the middle of nowhere, like, would I want a load of credits or would I want that one component that, kept my farm going, so. So we did, we took that idea and we ran with it, and we did some visual exploration into what would a trading post be like on one of these frontier outposts. So as you can see on the images, we wanted that feeling of the majority of the stuff around this outpost is pretty much junk. Spaces isn't at a premium, so they just keep it outside. Maybe it's rusting, maybe it's rotting, maybe it's getting overgrown. But I love that idea is that you're approaching one of these settlements, it's very easy to understand, all right, this is a trading post because there's just all of their stuff like hodgepodge around the outside.
Well, and it opens up another aspect to it, which is the characters who inhabit it, because the sort of general shop experience that you have with the storekeeper is very conventional. This is what we've done so far has been a lot of franchise stores, actual companies that own, that are selling wares, who have customer service and stuff like that. And the idea being that out here, the experience is going to be much more different. It's not going to be that polished.
Exactly.
It's going to be much more of a personal interaction with somebody. So it's been really fun talking with, the AI and behavior guys to try and work out exactly like how is that dynamic supposed to work and feel like for the player.
All right, cool. So that was a little bit about the interiors of these outposts. So let's throw it over to Eric now, and he can go into a lot more detail into the visual design process we did for the interiors.
Hello, I am Eric Gagnon, Principal Concept Artist on Star Citizen. Today I will present the interior colonialism outpost concept and explain a bit how the pre-production process works. The goal is to create an interior design for the Homestead Colonialism Outpost. It was the first time we had to create a timeless design look. We have the objective to create something warm and with a cozy feeling interior. At the beginning, we started from this concept art made by Christian Dorwitz. We have a lot of information in there to inspire the interior design. In those interior, we have a specific zones. Social area, place to eat together, play game, leisure, the bedroom, place to relax, have a proper personal space, and of course, sleeping. The engineering room, the place for the building machine who maintains the possibility to survive there. The technical room, the appropriate space to analyze minerals, some elements of the planet entrance, used for storage material and stuff to go outside. At the beginning, we had an overview of the plant that's helped to organize the zone. To create all of those areas, we need to do a lot of exploration in design. Social area. For those sketches, we want a centerpiece on the ceiling. Could be a light, fan, or whatever that could be cool. We feel the curvy shape of that space. Here on this sketch, I play with a very contrast values and a greenish color palette. That one is the best. Long vertical windows from the side, let the light inside a lot. After validation of the most relevant sketch, we do a 3D blackout. As you see, this 3D blackout follows very closely to the last sketches. From the screenshot of the 3D blackout, I did a sketch over in a gray tone value. That helps to better organize the coloring phase to make sure all the elements fit and will live together. After this, I like to do a 2D elevation concept. It's a good way to make sure all elements fit together and the ratio proportions between each of them. The final key shot of the social area brings it alive. Nice lighting comes from the windows. Cozy mood gives a soul to this social area. Now my concept art co-workers extract the elements from this key shot and break down the props to define more accurately. First, the Homestead radial counter done by Danny Chan from the UK. That concept is the perfect blueprint to start the production. The color lighting people food is there on this one. More close-up version on specific zones of the radial kitchen counter. Some explanation are had to properly convey the intent of each part. All the details are there to define a fully functional stove. For the bedroom area, the process is the same as the social area. The sketch phase is essential. As you see here is an example of grayscale sketch. From one of those shots, we get a validation from art directors and CR. And boom, this is the final one. To detail the engineering room, we again go back to the painting technique. This process again is key to send us in the right direction. The detail of the machinery, cabling, metal grates really help convey the ambience of the room, and also informs what players will have to do when they go to this place. For the technical room, we wanted to make sure the technology came through. Again, it's the same process where we start from manual painting to set the tone and then deep dive into color, elevation, and then the final key piece. To make the homestead a living space, the bathroom props are important to define the functionality of futuristic hygiene. Finally, let's exit by the entrance. This is the first sketch exploration I did for Star Citizen. The goal of the homestead entrance is to show what the player has access to and set the overall ambience of the place. A huge thanks to all for helping to make the final result in the game match the amazing work that is produced during pre-production. I sincerely hope you will enjoy living in those homesteads in Star Citizen. Thanks everybody.
Thanks, Eric. Awesome stuff.
Now that we've shown a lot of art and talked a lot of theory, we want to get into game and show off what we've been working on. We're going to be showing you multiple playthroughs and how it changes based off of what you do and how you have faction with the certain game. So here we are waking up in 400i that will be released in 3.15. This is the competitor to the Constellation. Doesn't compromise cargo for vehicle storage. It's faster, more agile than the Connie, and it can run with a smaller crew. So this is the captain's quarters, and then we'll go out and see a little bit more of the habitation deck, and then make our way to the cockpit. So this would be the social area that you can meet and eat and basically plan your next mission. And then from here, we'll go to the cockpit. So here we're over Pyro 3. We've come here for a mission to acquire an artifact. And you'll be making your way down to a trading post. So wanted to just give you a quick overview, and then we can start talking about the planet.
Yeah, Pyro 3 is just a terrestrial planet. It has a very thin, breathable atmosphere, but it's still pretty inhospitable, very cold. As you can see, some of those lightning strikes in the clouds, but yeah, very, very pretty looking.
So this is the first time we're actually seeing clouds above a terrestrial planet. You know, we went through quite a few iterations of forms. What we ultimately ended upon was something that felt quite dramatic, still believable in terms of how the wind would have shaped them. But yeah, it's showcasing a lot of the more recent tech that came online. Also, what we're seeing here is like some kind of distant thunder strikes. And what this is, it's kind of like a prelude to, future weather features that will be coming on board, and how this will tie into, storms and ship handling, due to the turbulence. And it's great seeing the, the rain hit the canopy glass here, when you go through these cloud banks. also as part of the process of shaping, one of the things we really wanted to do is create these kind of like these pockets in between the clouds. So you're in these cavities, so as you're flying through, you get glimpse of the terrain beneath you. But you know, it feels really quite exhilarating, you know, to fly through. Also as well, like it's showcasing a lot of the more recent tech coming on board as well. So you know, it's a lot of optimizations been going on. So it's way more performant than previously it was. Also, like the level of artifacting that we're seeing here is substantially reduced, certainly on higher spec machines.
It also gives you a great sense of parallax when you fly through these cloud sandwiches.
A cloud sandwich?
Yes, that's what it feels like. It feels like you're the meat or the cheese of a cloud sandwich.
The cheese of a cloud sandwich. So as we get out of the cheese, another really big feature that was important for me was, terrain shadowing and terrain occlusion from the cloud. So you're actually seeing, these large areas of occlusion cast onto the terrain. It just adds that depth. It just adds that believability to what we're seeing in the frame. And when you see like these dark overcast clouds and they're hovering above the mountains, it finally completes the frame. Especially when you see these distant rumbles of thunder in the distance.
So James Cameron, who's doing the run through, yes, that is his name. He will be taking us down to the outpost. The goal for us is to basically make 50 of these, whether they're inhabited or derelicts or even basically inhabited by a farmer or inhabited by a gang. So the goal is to have these act as different factions, and so that you can develop different rep associated with them, and you can start seeing how big these outposts stretch to with the comms tower that's behind us, and then even some of the AA turrets that you'll actually see up close and personal.
That was a really good approach from James there. Good landing. That was a good solid 3 out of 10.
3 out of 10. Jeez.
Ian's a tough grader.
Yeah, I'd go 6 at least.
No one's ever got a 6.
Gotta watch me land, man.
So here we'll go down to the technical deck. Show off the cargo area, as well as the climate-controlled component areas, and then onto the gravity generator room and the stairway out. So you'll be able to learn more about the ship in one of the later panels that we have with Ben, Paul, and John. I think the team did a great job on this. I think this is one of my favorite skins. Yeah.
Yeah, they did a new skin, just something that felt a lot more, suitable for Pyro. But you can see how it feels suitably worn and weathered, to fit into these climates. And what we're seeing here is first boots on the ground, on Pyro. I think it looks great, especially in contrast to what we're seeing here is like actual AI on the terrain, walking about, going about their business. And is that an AA turret there?
It is. And radio comms towers and all these other elements that we want to make sure that are interactive for the player and allows them to go and explore or use to their advantage. We want them to be able to interact with these different items.
Here you can see like various outpost modules. To the right there, we've got the garage unit. You can see the infrastructure on the roof. But this large, beautiful, archway here kind of signifies, the main entrance, the primary entrance to the main social module. I think the airlocks look great. Fits in with the art style beautifully.
The team did a great job on this.
And then we've seen the concept art previously in the day, and then here you can see it translated in game, and I think it absolutely looks fantastic. The radial forms, is quite special to this art style, and you can see how that complements these archways that lead into other areas of the outpost.
So with the AI, we want to make sure that it's living, it's breathing. If you look back a little bit, there was a chef actually cooking. There's security guards here to make sure that they're actually protecting their investments, protecting their home from strangers. And then, but you have good rep with them, and so they allow you to kind of enter into certain areas that the other players wouldn't be able to enter into.
We also got a quick shot at the loadout that James is playing. So it's a female loadout, but it's also showing the backpack, which is new. Also some of the new hair as well, which is rendering much nicer.
So here the player will make their way out to the trading post, go see the dealer, acquire the artifact.
And for the trading post, we wanted to get all of the junk on the outside as well, so the player can see it as they're approaching. We wanted, as many tops as we could, and you can see it's using the new soft deck shader. So these are reacting to the planetary wind, the same force that the tall grass and the moss on the ground is reacting to as well.
The other thing with the trading post is, like Ian spoke about before, the inventory and what they'll be able to actually sell here will vary depending on where they're at in the solar system. Are they close to a jump point where they might be coming down and using this as a chop shop, or are they in a very rural area that's, they care more about the frontier lifestyle and being able to survive versus money?
We passed the kitchen as well on the way back there. That's the local diner for this outpost. Tough crowd. Also, so in the inside as well, we wanted this, kaleidoscope of colors and shapes. Like it's just literally the dealers displaying all the wares, everything they'll have outside in the open here.
Welcome. Take a look. I'm sure I have what you want, and if not, I'll have something just as good.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, very good choice. Very good.
So after 5 million credits of disposable income, we get our first look at the Hadesian artifact, which is obviously going to be what is sort of a super rare thing that you'll hopefully be able to start finding in the galaxy, which is sort of, if you're familiar with the lore of Hades, was an old civilization that destroyed itself. So somehow this trader has gotten their hands on this artifact.
So here we're showing one way of actually playing through this area. It really depends on your standings within the gang and how they want to deal with you. And then what's the dealer going to do? What's the dealer going to charge you? And from there, we have different ways of actually showing this. And we can look at option 2 now. So here we're going to run it back a little bit and show off a different way of entering into the trading post. This is a little bit more straightforward versus in demo 1 we took a side route through the social area.
So yeah, this is just some additional warehouse space that the trading post would have. And you can see it will lead directly onto this courtyard. And for the keen-eyed people, you'd see that the barbecue's still not being eaten yet.
The grill master would be fired.
Yeah. Still full of wieners.
So with this area, again, we just want to make sure that it's filled out with items, filled out with different things that you can interact with and possibly buy. It's like Dave said in the beginning, we want the stores to feel different here, but it's still making it feel believable.
Quick reference to some additional traversal areas there on the right when we came in.
Well, welcome. Take a look. I'm sure I have what you want, and if not, I'll have something just as good.
Yeah. The guys had a lot of fun dressing these areas. There's a lot of storytelling going into it.
So here we decide not to pay the price. And we don't mind losing reputation with the faction, and decide that we're going to take the artifacts through betrayal.
Just take it. Straight in the backpack.
So here we've got different routes for the players to enjoy and to use to flank and also navigate around. So each area will have different secondary and tertiary routes of navigation. James was really just trying to scare him there versus actually kill him.
That was intentional. Good shot, James.
You could also, if you notice real quick, there was the civilians are actually cowering as opposed to fighting, which is kind of, you'll see another coming up. But it's super cool.
So again, here the player will have the choice, do they actually want to interact with the civilians, or, does their conscience get better of them?
I think James made the right choice there.
He was nice, yeah.
One of the things when we was playtesting this a lot is when you see the enemy AI kind of fanning out across the terrain like that, it's fantastic to see. It feels really great. Just seeing the base start to wake up to you and as you're trying to exfiltrate. Also, I know it's under combat stress, but that yellow grass just looks fantastic. That's how I play.
So here, James just wants to get out real quick. We slightly hinted to in the first walkthrough, this is where the AA turrets will come alive, and basically, if you're not fast enough, as James isn't, with your countermeasures, then they'll take you down. So what we saw there was the player went in, and based off their actions, the faction changed against them, and then basically became very aggressive. So in this last playthrough, what we'll show you is if the faction is already against you from the very beginning, and what are different ways that you can go about it. So here we are in our last walkthrough. Since you're all by yourself, we wanted to show the player take a stealthy routes versus if you were with friends, you could go in guns blazing. But this allows the player to come in, access the outpost from a different side than what we've shown, It also allows them to clock all the AI and see how they want to approach the problem and see what other secondary or tertiary routes would be open to them, either via the ladder or maybe a possible door.
Good night. That was a great shot. Also, one thing we did as well, as Todd said, we changed the time of day. The wind is slightly stronger, so you'll see the gorgeous yellow grass blowing just a little bit more intense than before. Also, what we're seeing here is like something to imply at the frontier living. Maybe they're growing crops or vegetables out here, but it also gives a kind of like a soft cover approach to the perimeter of the base. Nice.
Also, with it being a different time of day, this allows us to show off the AI having their 24-hour schedules so that they can be in different areas when you approach it. So if you approach it at night or you approach it during the morning, they'll be doing different things, whatever is valid for their schedule.
That door's locked, so there's no going through that way. But what James does actually see here as he's scouting out the next AI is, just checking the roofline. But as I said previously, we wanted as many kind of like views in to the base as possible. Just so the player can continue to keep context of what's inside.
But also, when you're inside, it allows the player to have context of where they're at within the actual outpost, and that was a great shot.
The AI fell beautifully on the already called out beautiful yellow grass and moss. Also, as James is looking back, what he's doing is actually making a mental map of possible routes, possible advanced traversal routes on top of the outpost. And we saw the dealer there in the bedroom, just end of the day.
So with each outpost, there'll be different routes that will be open to the player or closed to the player. So some of them might have ladders on the outside, some of them might not. Some of them might have basically ways to get in through the floorboards, other ones won't. But this is just one version of, many possibilities. So here, the player will take a secondary route of navigation all the way up to the roof, and then from here, this allows them to be able to check out any of the AI, also be able to look at any of the interactables in the future. If you got a good reputation, maybe you need to go and fix different items on the roof, or if you are there for nefarious means, then maybe you want to take out the power, and which will then kill the AA turrets, or will turn off the lights in the outpost. So it allows the player to interact with different items and then basically create a nice little sandbox for them to play in. So here you can see one of those interactables as well as the AI.
And just behind these interactables, we're seeing these kind of archways. Like right now, these are just kind of empty, and to just illustrate like a guard point. In the future, these could be maybe customizable, or they could contain like an AA turret, like we saw on demo 1, or it could contain like cargo storage. Basically, we tried to design something that was as flexible as possible.
So here we're showing off the looting system as well as the inventory system. So this will be shipping in 315. This allows bodies to be able to be interacted with and take off the items associated with it. Also, with this change, you will no longer have global inventory, so you can't be pulling off weapons that you didn't take with you to this location. Everything will be regarding what you carry is what you have, and so it really makes the players think about how they want to approach the problem, and then also encourages them to look around and see if the designers have placed different things that they can interact with or use to help get past a certain route or a certain way that they maybe didn't bring with them.
And we'll also be including the, I believe in 315, the Knickknacks app for your Mobiglass. So now that you aren't carrying everything on your body and it's not sort of universal inventory, you'll be able to consult this app to see kind of where stuff is being stored and keep it better organized and stuff like that.
So here, this allows the player to have a quick little puzzle, but just gives them a little bit more interaction, and then allows them to go on to what I would consider a tertiary route, versus climbing up the ladder and possibly having to deal with the AI or them being spotted by them. Also, I think the team did a great job on the planet as well as the outpost. These are really fun to play and sneak around in, and allows for many possible ways of attacking the same problem.
What we're seeing here is like James is actually getting up onto through one of these like rooftop storage modules, and it's given like the highest point in the base. So from here, you can actually make probably the most informed decisions on how to approach the next problem. We're seeing this guard routine here, and then ultimately throwing an item to distract the guard.
Allows them to go and access new areas. It's a behavior that we're still working out, but at least we're seeing like the first iterations and be able to continue to optimize it as well as make sure that the behavior is working properly.
So we just saw that for the first time. It's like the first rooftop airlock hatch. So previously, route in and out, if the outside wasn't pressurized, we wouldn't have this option. But now through that rooftop airlock, you can cycle and then infiltrate through the roof. And also what we're seeing here is potentially scouting out an advanced traversal up into the rafters, getting on top of some infrastructure and getting like this overview as we go into the garage module.
So here, this is placeholder, but it gives you an idea of, we want to have different interactables, different loot boxes laid out around the location. So if the players explore, they'll be rewarded. We want to encourage them looking in every nook and cranny and enjoying, what the outpost has for them.
And one of the things that's interesting is these garages won't be vehicle spawn points, so it's not like a big kind of like pad in the middle, but it's more like if you want to have your vehicle there, you got to drive it in and park it. So here you can see a variety of vehicles just laid out how the player would have just parked them. Just gives a much more believable and realistic design.
So again, we're just encouraging different navigation, different routes for the player to go and see. Over to the left, back there was a possible way of going into the floorboards are going underneath the outpost. Again, those will be opened up or closed off based off of just how we want to build the outpost. Not every one will be built the same. Our philosophy for these are to make sure that each one of them feels unique, and this is just one way of us customizing it and making each one feel different. And so the player won't always be used to the same routes. So here, again, we're using the inventory system. We allow the players to go in, and if you take out a certain AI, they might have different tools or different notes or different items that you'll need in order to solve your mission.
Interestingly, when we was designing these spaces, we knew we wanted these internal airlocks, but we knew we needed some sort of view, porthole on them, just so before you commit through, before you cycle, you can just double check to see if there's any bad guys on the other side.
So we got some ragdoll bugs. I guess it wouldn't be a CitizenCon without any sort of issues or bugs.
So here, previously the players being, on the roof, they've come down through the main section of the outpost. But here, what the players doing is they're going to the underfloor section. So these are vents, but they're more like subfloors. So they're meant to feel very dark, very minimal, but you're actually seeing the foundations of these outposts. So inside here, it's the player will need to kind of work out how to navigate through them. It's very much a torch-based experience, and then within here, what the player can actually do is work out roughly where they are in relation to the to what's upstairs. And what you're seeing here, this light bleeding down through, you can kind of make informed decisions, or okay, that's where that AI was, or right now the player is just underneath that main social space. So if you think back, that was that guard in the beginning, just next to the kitchen counter. But we've intentionally made these spaces not necessarily very easy to navigate, because there wouldn't be a lot of light down here. The player would have to follow, for example, like James is following the blue wire here, making a decision to hey, if I follow that blue wire, I'm probably going to get to something interesting, or a point where I can actually, exit this subfloor space and get back up above.
And what I like about them is basically just the claustrophobic feel of it. And then obviously the addition of possible secondary or more advanced navigation, so either going into prone or just going full crouch.
So here we come out in the bathroom space that's on the other side of the garage, so we're on the opposite side of the outpost from where we just were.
It's a good ragdoll.
Now the body drag. In the shower.
So here, this is just a different wrapper on a loot box. In this case, it's a hamper. And so the player will be able to really change outfits and adjust the way that they look, so that they can walk around the outpost and not be noticed. There will be kind of a certain time limit associated with it. We still need to work out the details on how all that will work, but the goal is to give them a little bit of leeway, and so if you look the part, maybe you're not scrutinized as much, and the AI won't notice you as quickly.
So here we can see back into the social space, but this time on the other side. And then this door will lead directly into the habitation room that we saw previously on the outside.
Speaking of fun ragdoll physics.
That was a great one.
So here, the player decided to take the dealer out instead of actually figuring out how they could open up the safe. So they're going to have to look around the room. They're going to have to interact with the body and possibly see, is there a way for them to actually open it? In other cases, maybe the safe will be hackable in the future, and in some cases it won't be, and then you'll need to figure out a different way of actually opening it.
So here we spot a little clue, a little note, and you'll notice what's fun is like the name on here. If you look back and see some of the AI we've been taken out, you may notice some names. So here's the clue for the player. But one of the coolest things for me here is the player is holding an item with the clue, and while holding the item, they can seamlessly interact with another item to solve a puzzle. That's awesome.
And then here we got a little bug. The player was able to acquire the artifact, and then will be able to do whatever they want with it, either sell it or be able to use it somehow in a future mission.
One of the things that was really exciting about watching this kind of back to back is finally getting to see that freedom of choice. And it's really, really, I mean, again, our locations are always spectacular and beautiful, but now like having that sort of striking that balance between, this sort of well thought out social space and construction of these locations, but also an equally effective stealth and combat thing. It's super cool to see.
So after seeing the demo play through, 3 different ways, it was a huge team effort. So everyone that worked on the project, on this part of what we wanted to show, we want to say a big thank you, big shout out, because, we're just presenting it. It's the people that did a lot of the hard work that should be represented. And speaking of people doing hard work, now's a good chance to throw it over to Eddie and Joel, and they're going to tell you a little bit more about the how we built that outpost that we just saw.
I'm Eddie Hilditch. I'm a senior lead, and myself and my team have been working on the new colonialism outposts.
My name's Joel Azzopardi, and I'm senior environment artist too for the EU Sandbox team.
So after the initial concept is done and rounds of feedback have been iterated on, we move into pre-production. This phase allows us to spend some time testing the concepts for in-game viability. Translation from concept to game isn't always one-to-one, and during pre-production we'll get rough versions of the concept meshes into game and spend time making sure that they'll work practically. The art direction can also change at this stage, so we use this phase to kind of explore creatively as well, and concept art is a fantastic jumping off point for sparking ideas.
One of the first steps when starting a new location is to start look development. A hyper-focused small section of the location where we can hone in the tools and methods needed to execute the concept in-game. Some things translate well, some things don't. It's important to figure all this out before going full steam ahead with the entire team. One of the great assets on the Sandbox team is we have a lot of people who are passionate about concept and design, which means when translating from concept to production environment, it's very easy to expand on the concept art. With the art styles of the Colonial Outpost, we decided to change up the way we typically author content. Our hard surface locations are meant to feel prefabricated, like there's a manufacturing plant out there on ArtCorp that churns out these flat pack space station kits, so stations can be mass produced. Colonial Outposts are more personal, more handcrafted by the people who live there, based on their needs, not wants. They're on the frontier world, so they can't always choose luxury over practicality. Materials were one of the first things we tackled, and we started off by developing the idea of how the inhabitants would have built these structures and what materials they would use. We wanted to show not only the age of the outpost, but also wanted to hint at all those different layers of the structure and give you an idea how, functionally, they constructed them.
One of the biggest challenges with the new outposts is how we introduce variation between each location the player will visit. Building each as a bespoke set of buildings is impossible, as we want hundreds, if not thousands, of outposts in the game eventually. The modular approach we've developed really evolved out of our previous work on space station interiors, but with a few key improvements. This starts at the macro level, where on the planet's outposts are placed, how the local conditions affect your time there, then what kind of buildings an outpost has and how they're laid out, all the way down to the ability to independently swap out an underfloor layout in a single building of that outpost. We'll have various types of modules, from large standalone modules like warehouses or ore extractors, which have a singular function, all the way down to smaller room modules that can be connected together in different ways to form a complete headquarters building. After pre-production was finished, we had a list of the room module types that we wanted to tackle first. For the headquarters building, everything hinges around a hub module with different room modules that can be attached to extend the structure. The room modules will serve different functions in the base, with various gameplay systems linking one to another for an interconnected web of sandbox gameplay opportunities. As content creators for the outpost, we needed a new system to build, edit, and manage the library of modules we're creating. Rastar is the tool we use to do this. It allows us to intuitively create a location template directly on the surface of the planet. Not only this, but headquarter buildings can be snapped together directly within the tool, or with an intuitive user interface. One of the other major innovations with the Planet Tech has been the ability to modify the terrain mesh and flatten areas of terrain. Previously, we were at the mercy of the terrain when it came to designing our buildings, which is why our outposts had to be built with stilts and placed in naturally flat areas of the planet. Now, we can build much more natural buildings with walls and entrances connected directly to the planet's surface. And also, we can place these buildings in a much wider range of locations. We believe our new outposts inject a refreshing new location experience into Star Citizen. They're organic, warm, personal spaces that really convey the age and history of humanity's expansion into the verse. The new art style, the focus from design on gameplay, and the flexible modular approach to their construction will allow us as developers and you as players be part of creating a wider variety of rich and satisfying experiences for every outpost the player comes across.
Okay, cool. Thank you, Eddie. Thank you, Joel. That was awesome.
And moving on, we're actually going to talk to Corey now, who is going to give us kind of a deep dive into the creation of the artifact, which was actually kind of our first little glimpse of the Hadesian culture from Hades system.
Thanks, guys. I'm Corey Bamford, lead props artist at Cloud Imperium Games. I'm here today specifically to talk about the Hadesian artifact that you'll see in the walkthrough. So we knew early on we wanted some sort of MacGuffin for the walkthrough. We originally had a few ideas of what that could be. Originally, it was either going to be a tablet fragment, a sculpture, or a Hadesian artifact. So initially, the concept team explored a variety of ideas. We used a lot of reference for existing alien artifacts in the game, as well as reference from the real world. You know, lots of tomes and ancient kind of Egyptian stuff as well, just all sorts of really reference just to get a general idea. We knew we wanted to integrate some form of ancient power or technology into the asset. We also knew we wanted it to have some sort of symbolism and text. So once the concept team iterated further on these ideas, they then presented those back to Chris, and we narrowed down the selection of assets until we had a candidate that everyone was happy with. So once we had this asset in mind, it then came down to turning that from a concept into a production asset, and that's where the props team comes in. When a prop artist gets a concept like this, immediately the wheels in their head start turning, and they're trying to figure out the best way to implement it in our game engine. They need to find solutions within the engine to achieve the visual target of the concept. Obviously, it's not as simple as just taking the concept and replicating it. We have to think about the shaders, we have to think about performance. Our job really is to find a solution within the game engine to achieve the visual target of the concept. Once we've figured out a strategy for achieving the look, we begin to actually make the content. So for the artifact, for example, we knew that it needed to be split into 3 segments and they needed to fit together. The first thing we do is get a placeholder into the game for the design team to actually implement as an entity. We also then figure out how the scale actually works in the player's hand and when they inspect it. For the artifact, there was a bit of back and forth between the size because we wanted to get a balance between it having prominence and also being easily carryable. After we figured out the size of the asset, we then need to actually break down how we're going to make it. So the first thing we really get into is the materials. We know that this asset is made of a few different materials. Firstly, we have the stone with the complicated glowing pattern. We also have these large copper structures and some smaller, thinner metal structures as well. For this asset, we knew we'd need to use unique textures just because of the amount of detail we wanted to achieve. One of the biggest challenges we had was making sure that the stone looked really good. To create the stone, we started with some scan data of rocks and concrete, as well as some mesh data like curvature. We also used a lot of procedural noises from Substance Designer just to add some variety. Using the height map as a jumping off point for the rest of the texture maps is quite a nice logical and physicalized way of doing things. It took quite a lot of iteration to get the final look. It was definitely a group effort. The glow was probably the trickiest part of this asset. We ended up actually using a shader some of you might remember from the Vandal Driller trailer. We created the iconography using a bespoke texture mask, and then the circles were derived from some cells within Substance Designer. We took these cells,